Hello and welcome to my channel. Today's video is all about recycling plastic because July is seen to be the international month for recycling plastic, so it seemed apt for me to create something using recycled plastic. So today I'm going to go from using a board similar to this, so this is one of two boards, and then turning it into something like this. So, hang on a sec. So as you can see, I've created something new with some recycled plastic. So without further ado, let's get into how I created this piece. So what I've done is I've taken the plastic sheeting and I've just placed it on top of some white paper so that I can see where I'm going to be painting the design on. Now the plastic was left over from a previous project, so I took the plastic sheet from this before turning it into a 3D piece, and so I had that plastic left over. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mix some colour in with some gel medium. Now gel medium sticks well to plastic, so this is an impasto gel medium, and I'm just adding a few drops of liquid pigment to the gel medium, but you can use inks. Anything that's got a translucent look to it will work well. If you use acrylic paint or whatever, then you may lose some of the translucency, so that's why I'm using ink. However, it will still work well with any kind of paint. So as you can see, I'm just painting this onto the surface of the plastic, and I'm not being too careful about it looking perfect or anything. The point is just to get the colour down onto the sheet. So I decided there wasn't enough colour pigment in this, so now I've just put some neat ink into the plate and I'm now just brushing that on top, and I'm just going to go across the whole sheet, just adding extra ink to that just to darken the colour up. And as you can see, I'm not creating a nice smooth transition of colour. I'm just adding colour here and there to give it a more abstract feel. So next I've changed the colour up to a different colour blue because I want to create different coloured fish in this project. So I'm adding a darker blue down the bottom, and then I'm going to go back and blend it slightly with the other colour so that I've got a transition between the lighter blue and the darker blue. So then I'm going to leave this to dry for a couple of days before coming back. So now that this is fully dry, I'm now cutting the plastic with a hot tool. Now I've placed it on some MDF board, and this allows me to cut through the plastic without ruining my surface below. And as you can see, I'm just taking my time and allowing the heat of the tool to cut through this plastic. Now the shape of my fish is more of an abstracty shape. It's not designed to be a perfect looking fish, because at the end of the day I want this to have an abstract feel to it. So I found that when you cut onto the MDF, the plastic will actually stick slightly to the edges of the board, so you'll need to use a knife to lift that up from the board. And then as you can see, we've now got our shape of our fish for our recycle project. And as you can see, we've cut this on, as we've cut this on the board, we're left with an outline of the previous fish, so we can use this as a guide for cutting more of the same. Now I didn't want my fish to all be absolutely perfect, however it is a guide to give me the same sort of size and shape, and none of them are perfect, but it just gives you a good layout design for it. So now that we have all our fish shapes, it's now time to give them holes for the eyes. So I've just changed over the tool, the nib, sorry, on the hot tool to then create the holes in these shapes. So I've just laid them out, and I'm now just very gently going through and giving small holes for the eyes. And this is also going to give where some of the decoration is going to be placed, so this helps with positioning our decoration when we come to place these on the board. So for the eyes I'm using upholstery studs, but you could use thumbtacks or anything that's got a broad head and a metal spike. So I'm just cutting that metal spike off because I don't need all of that, so I'm just left with a small amount that will then fit into the hole of the eye. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some gel medium and glue this into place. And I'm going to do this with all of the fish. So I'm using an impasto gel medium because I find that this sticks really well to the plastic and resin. So as you can see, I'm just using a small amount, and I'm going to coat the back of each fish and the upholstery stud and then position those on the board. So now I'm just positioning these on the board to get a feel for where I want them to sit. So I'm using the contours that are already existing in the board where I've put the acrylic diamonds, and I'm following those shapes, and I'm leaving a little bit of a gap between each of the fish just so that you can see those fish when we come to pour the tinted resin on top. So once again, once I'm happy with the position of the fish and that they've all got a good coating of the gel medium, I'm going to leave these to dry. Now these again took a couple of days to dry, so I'll come back in a couple of days to then add the resin. So I've mixed up a batch of resin, and I'm now going to place it into a clean cup before adding a couple of drops of the liquid pigment. Now the reason why I'm adding it to a clean cup is I want to make sure that I've got no sticky spots going down into the resin piece. So that's a tip for you. So if you are experiencing sticky spots in your resin, it's recommended that you transfer it to a clean cup and mix it further, because then you don't get any residue from the sides of the cups dripping down onto your piece. So as you can see, I've added 2 drops of the liquid pigment, and in this one I'm using turquoise. Now you could add just 1 drop at a time just till you get the consistency of blue that you're after, but I want to make the fish disappear somewhat so that it gives the impression that they're underwater. So next, pour your resin over the top of the fish and on the board. And this is where you could have had issues if you've not mixed your resin properly and you're scraping the side of your cup to get all of the resin out. If those edges are not mixed properly, then you could end up with sticky spots. So this is why I transferred it to a fresh cup. So next I'm going to gently warm the resin. Now being mindful not to burn the plastic because it could curl up, so I just want to warm the resin to allow it to flow more easily across the surface of the board. And then using my gloved hand, I'm now going to just spread this resin around across the surface of the board. Paying particular attention around where the fish are, because I want to make sure that the resin flows in between and along all of the edges so that we don't have any spots where there's no resin. So I'm just going to move my way around. And also because we've got some acrylic diamonds already on this board, you can get some pooling happening in the center. So I'm just going to make sure that I can drag all of the resin right out to those edges. Now, I don't know about you, I think those acrylic diamonds are working well to give the impression of bubbles underwater. So I think using this old board for this project is working quite well. So once you're happy with that, let your resin sit for about 10 minutes or so, and then we're going to add some embellishments to this to give it a more watery feel. So what I've done here is I've added 1 drop of the liquid pigment to the resin, and then just using a stick I'm just going to pull it in a motion around the fish and on top of the fish, so that it looks like there's a flow of water flowing both under the fish and over the fish. So just take your time with this. So just using the edge of the stick, I'm just going to pull this along the surface of the resin. Now you don't want to do this all over the board, you just want to pick some areas to bring out the tones and the highlights. So I'm just adding this in certain areas. Now what I did find was adding them near the stones, when I started pulling them through the stones, it actually started making a really nice effect. And so I then concentrate on adding the ink or liquid pigment just to the stone area and then pulling them through where those bubbles are, because it seemed to work well doing that. So just work your way around the board and just adding it to places here and there. As you can see, it's starting to come together quite nicely. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm actually placing them over the top of the stone so we get those bubbles appearing through the colour, and it makes for a nice interesting effect. Now as I've added some extra resin to this board, some of the bubbles have become submerged and hidden, so I'm just going to add a few extra around here and there just to bring some of them up to the surface and just adds a little bit more detail to the piece. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video and it's given you some ideas for recycling your own plastic and repurposing some of your resin boards that you didn't like. If so, I'd love to hear what you've done and what you think of this project, so please leave a comment below. Also, if you like this and you would like to see more resin ideas, I've got plenty more to view in my channel, so pop along there to go and view what else I have. So until next time, bye for now.